Sure.
Explain what
Do,
to
do,
do in those
do,
instances.
do you have to know what's going on for there to be a shift? No, you don't. Has anyone just taking a survey, has anyone in here ever intellectually understood a problem you had, but it didn't shift? Has anyone ever had this happen about 10,000 times? Yeah, I mean, most of us could write a master's thesis about our stuff. You know, you're all people that have been in personal growth a long time. You've read lots of books, you've been to lots of trainings, and you know a lot about all this stuff. How much has it helped? I mean, I'm not saying it's bad to understand this stuff. It can be helpful, but it doesn't cause it to shift. Most of this stuff is operating at a level that's much deeper than that of cognition, and even at a level deeper than that of belief and of language. A lot of it is on the heart level, or even deeper than that. And that's one of the great things about Holosync, is it somehow seems to create changes on levels deeper than things like changing your beliefs or saying affirmations and things like that. It operates at a deeper level than that. So usually what happens, my experience, Brett, with seeing lots of people do this, is that they have the shift and then they have the understanding. They have the shift and then they go, oh, okay, now I get what that was about. And they figure it out later. And I have found, I went through 10 or 15 years of frustration because I really, I'm a somewhat intellectual person, as you can probably tell, and I am left brain analytical type, and I went into reading all about all this stuff about psychology and personal growth and all that, and I had a real good understanding of exactly what I was doing, and it didn't help at all to shift it for me. The intellectual understanding is, it's okay to have it, and sometimes it can help in some ways, but it doesn't create the change. So that's another one. I suppose that's another I should understand this or something, but it doesn't matter if you understand it, because
when you're saying that you should lay down and try and feel it, because I read Gendling and I thought it just didn't work for me, because I was saying put a name to the feeling and to the sensation. And it's like it feels like a feeling. It doesn't feel like a word.
I think that where Gendlin's process falls down, and I have to say, they have trainings that you can go to, and I haven't been to them, and it could be that if you go to one of those trainings, it all becomes obvious why he does everything he does. But I think that why focusing works when it works is because you get out of your head, and you get out of thinking about it, and you get out of all the defense mechanisms you have that come up when you're in some really intense feeling, and you just watch. And that getting out of the way reduces the suffering, and it lessens the shoveling out of stuff or blocking things from coming in that can forestall the quantum leap from happening, and so it allows the shift to happen. And when he says, put a word to it and take all these potential issues that it could be, and take them one at a time and look at them and decide which one, I think that gets people into their head and into the analytical part and away from being the witness. I think ultimately he's trying to get you to be the witness, but I think where it falls down is that a lot of people latch onto that stuff, the intellectual part of it, and they can't get past that into the witness. And that's exactly what happened when I would teach this in workshops. At first, I had people try to, I gave them an instruction sheet and had them do it by themselves, and then that really didn't work. I mean, you're sitting there, okay, I'm feeling the feeling. Okay, let me see, what's the next step? And by the time you read what the next step is, you're not in the feeling anymore, and so you've got to go, and it was just too complicated. So we had pairs where people would guide the other person through it by kind of reading the instructions to them, so they didn't have to get out of state for the next thing. And then when people shared at the end, most of them talked about all this intellectual stuff that went on. Well, I realized that this, and they had all this thought process and intellectual stuff that happened. And that's not what it's about. It's not about having an insight, although you could have an insight as a result of a felt shift. It's about, it just leaves. I mean, most people in this program have had the experience, after they've been in it for a while, where somebody comes up to them and does something to them or says something to them that would have really set them off before. And it doesn't set them off. I remember one day some guy came up to me and said something really snotty to me, and I know 6 months before that, this was when I'd first started doing this, 6 months before that, I would have wanted to smack the guy in the nose. But he said this thing, and I just thought, so what? Big deal. And then as I walked away, I thought, weird. That is weird. Why didn't I want to punch that guy out like I usually do? It had no charge to it. Now, I didn't have any intellectual understanding of what had happened at all, but a change had happened for me. And later on, I got the intellectual understanding, but that's what happens. You don't need to understand it for it to shift. Jose? Yeah, another way to look at what we're trying to do here is we're trying to up-level your attachments to preferences so that you can still want whatever it is, but if it doesn't end up being that way, you don't have to suffer. If you're attached to things being a certain way, when they don't turn out that way, then you do this whole suffering trip, which doesn't do anybody any good. It just makes you feel horrible. But if when it happens, you're able to say, oh well, right?
Oh well.
That's her mantra now. Oh well. If you can just say, oh well, it didn't turn out that way, and then let it go, then you don't have to suffer. And the outcome is no different than if you had gotten the outcome you didn't want and flipped out over it. Same outcome.
So when people
You just
say,
skip
"Why
the
don't you
flipping
go
out.
out of Holosync," I say, I can now leave the dishes in the sink overnight. I mean, that's huge.
You pig. You should always wash the dishes before you go to bed.
I could.
Oh, man. So, could we get a testimonial from you on that to put on the website?
It's an enjoyment getting up to Thanksgiving, Very pleasant.
It depends whether you're doing it because you want to or because you should. All right, anybody else have any you're cutting into your free time, but that's okay if you are enjoying this discussion, because I think it's been pretty valuable.
We should be going.
Are you beginning to get an understanding of how this whole process of growth works? And all these pieces I've been talking about, are they kind of starting to come together and you can see how they're related to each other? All this, the stuff about oneness and the stuff about how Holosync works and the stuff about witnessing and the stuff about chaos and threshold and all of that, it all kind of fits together. And I'm just trying to give you a way to know what's happening, to be able to notice the process, see where you are in it, notice how you used to deal with it, and then have a more conscious way of dealing with it, because it just makes everything so much easier. We can take this to a higher level than the level of belief. And that's what I meant by you can play Hamlet, but don't be Hamlet. Because all of these beliefs, whatever beliefs you want to adopt about anything, is part of playing Hamlet. But if you are not going to be Hamlet, you have to realize that beliefs of any kind are a projection. That the basic energy of what is a meaningless energy going nowhere for no reason. It has no meaning and no content other than that which you put on it. And that's true awareness, I think, is when you get to the point where you realize you are putting all meaning on everything. How many people here have done Course in Miracles? The third or fourth lesson in Course in Miracles, nothing in this room means anything. And then I think one of the next or the lesson after that says, I have put all the meaning that anything in this room has on that thing. And if you can get to the point where you really understand that in your soul, that nothing means anything unless you give it that meaning, that's what it means to be the creator. That means that we're playing Hamlet, except you get to write the script. And so Step one is write a really nice script so that you're living in a happy world. Step two is you know that at an even deeper level it's just a script. Even if it's a nice happy one, it's just a script. And that beyond it is something much more mysterious and much more powerful and much more awesome, and that's totally understandable, not understandable really by the human mind. And if that's not profound enough for you, then I don't know what would be. Well, and if anybody needs any more reading material, Werner's bookmobile will be here for them. And I have a feeling he has lots of books he can tell you about.